wanted to make a quick introduction video on a topic I am working on since a few months now. Maybe you already saw in my YouTube channel that we regularly sparring with the Smallsword, and we just like to use offhand weapons like the cloak or coat. We even used a lantern in the dark. Maybe you saw this video already too. And we really like to use a left-handed dagger, so a left-hand parry dagger together with the Smallsword. This parry dagger, this is one I made myself. It was more like a decoration dagger, so I made the blade blunt. Filed off the edges, and it's not pointy anymore. It has a small cross section. It was wider than the original, and it had a bigger pommel. It was just a decoration dagger or something like that. And yeah, I put on just some little screws here, so the balance is right now. Okay, this is just a training dagger. From the design, it's a little bit based on plug bayonets, and also what we see in Domenico Angelo's Smallsword manual, where he shows a little bit about Smallsword and dagger. What sources do we use? For Smallsword we mainly focus on Donald McBain, Sir William Hope and Zachary Wilde, but we also put in a little bit of later Smallsword manuals like Domenico Angelo, because of the Angelo connection to the broadsword, and also it's quite basic or very, very solid standard French Smallsword he's showing. And still he has some interesting parts in his manual about using a cloak to cover with a Smallsword against the fighter armed with a saber, with a cutting weapon. So you use the coat or cloak or cape as an emergency shield to cover your forearm, to be better protected to parry the cuts of the saber. And of course the same would be true with the broadsword when we think about what Donald McBain is telling us about facing with a Smallsword or Squadron against broadsword or broadsword and touch. Besides the lantern, and also showing how to face someone armed with a Spanish rapier and fighting in the Spanish fashion, he also talks about facing the Italian style of fencing, and he describes first how the Italians are fencing with the Smallsword as a single weapon, and then he mentions that in Italy it's still a mode to carry a dagger with you and to use it as a parry weapon. So he says, in the instant when they draw the Smallsword, they grab, when they are right-handed, they grab from their right hip with their left hand the parry dagger and use it. And he says it's not common anymore in other countries, except he talks a little bit about French fencing masters and their kind of final tests where they have to fence and also show how to use a parry dagger. But he says that it is not quite common anymore, but if you're traveling in such countries, then you should be aware how to face them and maybe also how to fight with it. So first he shows how to fight with Smallsword and dagger, and then he talks about how to face with his common single sword method to fight against Smallsword and dagger. The daggers Angelo shows are quite small. They don't show any parry rings or something like that, so I think a simple, not too long, not too short dagger with simple crossguard helps. You could even use some kind of Bowie knife or similar big knife. You could even use your Highland dirk, but keep in mind that even the small cross without parry rings and other hand protection is already very good if you catch the opponent's blade to prevent it from sliding down, so you have better control. So I tried it out with a regular dirk, it works too, but you have a little bit of a disadvantage. So of course you could use any form of big knife or dagger, but with a little bit of a cross guard it's quite better, but you don't need this kind of typical rapier parry dagger. It does not have to be too long, so I think this is like 40 or 45 centimeters overall. It can be like 50 centimeters, but it also might work with something a little bit shorter. So as long as you have maybe like this of a blade to parry, then you can use any form of knife, because you don't use this to deflect a blow from a heavy sword. This is just to, you know, parry away a little bit of a very thrust-centric weapon you are facing. So I would not recommend to use such a dagger against a broadsword or a saber. You will get your hand cut. What you can do, however, is if you like to phase it, then you go for our broadsword and dirk material and use this as an emergency shield to parry against cuts with a small sword. But now, small sword with dagger against a similar weapon, against a small sword or another one fighting with small sword and dagger. We can take a little bit also from a manual which is from the earlier 18th century, I think. It's not really a fancy manual, it's more like pictures and some descriptions, but a lot of pictures. The guys fighting in this manual are looking quite pirate in style, partly, so you know, with bandanas on the head and whatnot. Personally, I call it a small sword pirate manual. I think of the parry daggers again. I did not find a lot of small sword parry daggers. When you search for historical parry daggers or left-hand daggers, you mostly find everything about side swords and rapiers, but you don't find anything or only little about small sword parry daggers. You find some specialized parry daggers for it, but I think that they maybe did not come usually as a pair, because it was not so common anymore in the 18th century to have a small sword with a parry dagger. I think it makes sense because with a small sword you can much quicker change the direction of your thrust and your binding, your engagement and disengagement, compared to the longer and heavier rapier. But maybe another reason was just, you know, convention. So like this is not for a street fight, this is for dueling, and you know, taking a second tool to help you is only something for the streets. Like, okay, you have a cloak because you're facing someone with a saber or broadsword and you have to defend yourself. Maybe also in duels, I don't know, I have to dig a little bit deeper into it. But however, we know it existed and we know it was still in use in the mid-18th century, according to Angelo. And maybe it was just kind of a local thing. He speaks of Italy and especially of Naples, where they never go out without their small sword and their dagger ready. So our approach here was to use the McGregor method, so adopting our fundamental broadsword basic skills and the principles of our swordsmanship in general, and adopted on the smallsword and also on the offhand weapon. As you know, we work of course a lot of with the broadsword and targe, broadsword and buckler, and broadsword and basket-hilted dagger. And from there was my start. I was also looking a lot into smallsword as a single weapon, after McBain, Wild and Hope especially, and a little bit of Angelo. And then we started to try out using offhand weapons, and it worked quite well. Just, I think, because we are already quite experienced with offhand weapons with a broadsword. And many of the things which are true when you talk about broadsword and basket-hilted dagger, or sometimes called an alehouse dagger, then you have also thrusts to defend against, and then the same rules apply here to the smallsword and the dagger. I was also looking a little bit into I was also looking a little bit into rapier and dagger, which is quite obvious to their principles they use, basic principles, looking into Fabrice and Capo Ferro and all the smallsword and dagger stuff. And what we came up with now is kind of a very simple, experimental, try it out, trial and error smallsword and dagger system, basing on and inspired by several historical manuals. Speaking of, McBain has a section about Portuguese guard with rapier and poignard, as he calls it, and I think he's also talking about the rapier as we imagine a rapier, or at least at this point a transitional rapier, a newer rapier, or in Portugal and Spain, the fashion, as we see later in Angelo, was still to have this kind of cup-hilt rapier. However, from there we can also adopt some stuff which he is using and which he is describing when you are facing this kind of Portuguese guard with rapier and poignard. So basic guard we are using is just like, and don't use the typical smallsword terms here, please note I'm using broadsword terms. So the basic guard we are using here is kind of this inside guard, okay, with my knuckle bow turned to the left, and the edge, if I have a smallsword with an edge, a double-edged smallsword facing to my left, so like a typical smallsword, a typical broadsword inside guard. The dagger is coming here with a slightly bended, elbow, not too close to the hilt, but not too far away, just here in a kind of natural position, being ready to parry, but you're not exposing your hand to get cut or hit or thrusted into the hand. So you have it here ready to defend and deflect everything which comes here on your left side, while on your right side you are still defending with your smallsword, basically. But Angelo described that the Italians are defending, or some Italians, if I understand him correctly, are defending everything with the dagger. So on the left side, on the right side. And the good thing is, as you know, we talked about it in backsword and basket-hilted dagger. We said, okay, in this case, everything on the broadsword side is parried by the sword, everything on the dagger side by the dagger, so you don't cross this. But with a thrust fencing, you can very well parry a thrust over your weapon arm, in example, parry it here with your dagger and counter. Okay, so in case of smallsword and parry dagger, you are allowed to parry crosswise. Maybe not down here, this is awkward, but over your own weapon arm, this works quite well. Speaking of how to parry, we don't hold the dagger, the parry dagger, in this kind of sword or saber grip. We have the thumb on the flat side of the dagger, of the handle, so on the flat side of the blade, because we want to have a wide parry device and parry with all the flat of the dagger. It's stiff enough to do that, it will not bend, and you parry with the edges and you parry with the flat. And from here you can easier, you cannot deflect here, and you have more control here, like so. You will see in rapier and dagger combat, they all use this kind of thumb grip. So I think it's also legit for the Parry dagger. And I think on Angelo's and the other pictures you can quite well see it, that they hold in the thumb here. Okay, so this is the basic guard. From here we do all our thrust, we can do all our parries with the small sword, but the basic default mode is this one. And then we switch to something which Angelo also shows. We switch to something where the hilt of your small sword is drawn back to your right hip and the dagger is out. So you have this kind of triangle, not too wide, not too close, in a natural position. So from here we go here. Okay. The advantage of this is that you have your dagger more forward to, for example, catch the blade of your opponent before he thrusts and then you counter, or you attack here. The disadvantage, of course, is your dagger hand is more vulnerable, and of course you are standing with your body wide, although the center here is easier to be attacked and to be hit. So here you have a smaller profile, here you open up a bit. Okay, so what we do is that depending on the circumstances, we switch between these two guards, and then we parry and attack from here, also with what Angelo tells us about how the Italians fence with a single small sword, using a lot of, circular movement. Angelo seems not very fond of it. He says this is the reason why they have a lot of double hits, but here, for the dagger and the small sword, this is quite good to switch between these two and then to use all these attacks. So how do we parry with the dagger? The easiest way is everything which comes down here, you're using kind of a small motion of your wrist, like an inside half hanger. Everything which comes over your dagger, you just go up like a high outside guard. And everything which goes over your arm, if you don't use your sword, then you're using like this kind of quick reverse inside guard. If someone thrusts under your sword here, this is not a very good idea. Here it is better to use your small sword. Okay, you should not forget, even if you like to use the dagger, you should not forget this is your main weapon. This is an additional device. You should not depend everything on this one. Okay, you can use here quick motions from the wrist to parry away everything. Okay, but this is your main weapon. That said, of course, in close quarter combat, you can use this to thrust and stab your opponent. I hope you liked this little introduction to small sword and dagger. Maybe I will make more videos in the future about it, but these are my first thoughts out of the experience and the research I did so far. Enjoy a little bit of sparring footage where you might see some of the principles used in combat, and maybe you also see some of the mistakes we still do with this kind of combination, but I'm getting quite fond of it. So thanks a lot for your support, and see you in the next video.